Well, God bless you one and all. Welcome back to the Bishop's Corner. And of course, my name is Bishop Dr. Herbert N. Scott, the Chief Prelate of the Liberty Hall Cathedral of Praise. And certainly this evening, we want to just thank you for joining us. And we also want to thank God for the man of God himself, Philip Reed, who is affectionately known as Dr. Phil. And he happens to be the visionary for the Bishop's Corner, and he's doing a tremendous job. Man of God, always a pleasure, sir, to have you and to know that you are indeed around. God bless you richly. We want to thank God tonight for the panel that we do have. We are, how can I put it? We are somewhat limited tonight, a few people missing, but I believe that no matter what, the show must go on. And we want to thank God tonight for the Apostle Lucien Rojas that is with us. Can we make the man of God feel welcome? Certainly, man of God, it's always a pleasure to have you in on the Bishop's Corner. Next, we want to thank God for the woman of God that is with us tonight, Pastor Carmel King-Lochke. Pastor Carmel King-Lochke is with us. We want to thank God for her. Woman of God, certainly it's a pleasure always to have you on the Bishop's Corner. Next, we want to thank God for our own Dr. Donna Boris that's with us, and she's becoming a regular now on the Bishop's Corner, and we just love her to death, and we thank God for her. And of course, we cannot forget the man of God himself, Dr. Philip Reed, that's with us, affectionately known as Dr. Phil. And I believe that he'll be joining us tonight on the Bishop's Corner. Well, tonight we have a very, very interesting program for one and all. Very, very interesting indeed. Okay, we are speaking about mental health and parenting. Mental health and parenting, and so many things can be said today about mental health. So many things we've already said about parenting. Okay, now tonight the spotlight: should GAYBCs be read in school? Should GAYBCs be read in school? Before we came on, we saw a preview of this, ABCs and so forth, and certain words gets to me. It gets to me, but there again, how I feel, others may not feel that way. So the question that I want to put to the panel at first is this: should GAYBCs be read in schools? Should GAYBCs be read in schools? And I just want the panel to be honest. How exactly do you feel about GAYBCs being read in school? And we must remember this, that somehow someone behind the scenes is trying in a manipulative ways to twist the minds of our little ones. I want to put that question first of all to the Apostle, man of God. Should GAYBCs be read in schools? How say you?
Well, thank you, Bishop, for having me on tonight, and greetings to the panelists. And yeah, it's a loaded question, and the LGBTQ is here, and I don't mean to pose a question with a question, but how do we deal with it? You know, I spoke on Sunday about in the book of Job about the sweet influences of Pleiades, sweet influences. And Job asked God a question, and God didn't answer him. He posed the question to him. And so while you ask me this question, I also want to say that this situation is here among us. So should we ignore it? Should we embrace it? Should we rise up in arms against it? How should we approach it, or how should we deal with it? What is my personal take? I don't know if there's a poll out there with statistics that will tell us how the American people think. Then we have what God's word says. And so there are moving parts here. And to cut the chase and get to the answer, I don't think it should. That said, um, I feel like just speaking out against it is one thing, but how do we deal with it? And I don't have the answer, but this gay movement, it's really dominating, if I may use that term. And it's quite possible that when I get on a plane, the pilot can be gay. The teacher that teaches children in school can be gay. The doctor attend to you, and the nurse that draw your blood can be gay. The news reporter, the anchorman is gay. The CEO of Apple, we all have an Apple phone. I don't know if we should boycott Apple. He's gay. This thing is real. It's among us. And so I think children at an early age, in their formative years, are they ready or are they equipped? Should we hide it? They're going to eventually know about it, or should it be taught? I think it's too much for them personally, and I think it can be confusing, rather confusing. It can be confusing for adults, much more for children at an early age. So I think there are some powerful people that behind this trying to indoctrinate the kids. But yeah, I think it's a bit heavy for children to be taught that way, and I think it's somehow it's trying to be they're trying to normalize this, and I'm not there yet, and I don't believe it should.
Amen. Man of God, let me ask you a question. As a spiritual man, do you believe that there's a spirit behind all of these things that's happening, especially today?
Absolutely, 100%. I believe there's a spirit behind things that are not of God. I think there are spirit behind good things. There are spirits behind bad things. I think there's a spirit behind the gun culture in America. You know, there's a spirit behind that. I mean, mass murders, I mean, more than one a day in our country, while Japan has one for probably the entire year. You know, so there are spirits behind these things. And you know, you read about Sodom and Gomorrah, and I go by biblical principles, and I still believe in all my heart that marriage is between a man and a woman. That said, I'm not against anybody that's gay, and I treat them with respect.
I think it's important that we get to these people who are trying to pass these laws. And if they're in office, get them out of office.
Well, Bishop, not only people who are trying to pass the laws, the people who are making the laws are gays. Mm-hmm. Some of these people are senators and congressmen and councilmen that they open, mayors, governors, they openly gay. Like I said, it's
and that's why before we vote for someone, we've got to do like a track record of them, find out who they are, where they come from, how do they feel, how do they believe, and so forth. Get more into this, into their mind, because as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. I mean, when the world was not like this, you would never hear about we trying to GAYBCs read in schools. Why? Because of the people that were in office. Now it seems as if, listen, man, the enemy is working on some people and they are pushing this type of agenda, my God, like nobody's business. Well, let's put that same question to Pastor Carmel King-Lochke. Woman of God, should GAYBCs be read in school? As a school teacher, please tell me honestly how you feel.
Well, a blessed good night to each and every person. It's truly an honor to be before you one more time. And Apostle Rojas, he already laid the foundation in what he said, and I'm in total agreement with what he said. Being in the, I would say in the midst of it, we see that the world is changing. We must admit that things are changing, and there are people who are pushing for a certain directive and certain actions that really need to be carefully analyzed before anyone makes any decision, because I don't think they have carefully looked at all of the possible repercussions of having this information provided to such young people. In statistics, it's said that between 7 to 8% of students identify themselves as gay in high school. Now, at the lower age, because children, if you deal with children, they're the best ones to deal with. They'll say, I'm your friend today. I'm not your friend in 5 minutes later. I like Teddy, and then they'll stomp on Teddy. I hate Teddy. So children are very fickle. So if you were to do that survey with children, the information would not be accurate, because really and truly, they don't have the proper development or mindset to be able to answer such a question. Therefore, the people who are pushing this agenda, they're saying that it is because it is unsafe for the LGBTQ, which are the gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning community, that many of them are being bullied, harassed, and their rights are being impeded on. So they believe, or they put forth that that's why everyone needs to be aware of who they are, so that they would be treated with some sort of equity. However, we know that because children's minds are still developing and they're so fragile, it's a danger in exposing them to that type of information. And we really and truly don't know what would be the end result of it. Now, in my opinion, I think it's wrong. I don't think it's a good idea, of course, because I'm a Christian, and I don't believe that that people have to make that decision or that choice to be gay or queer or questioning. So I'm looking at it from a different perspective than someone in the world who does not have that that belief system. But I do believe that it's the parents' job to teach their children about sexuality and about different types of lifestyle. I think that should be left to the parents. Just like they say religion should not be taught in school. Well, how can you bring these concepts that are against religion into the school? So you cannot have both. You cannot teach someone things that are contrary to most, because Christianity is still the largest religion within this United States. So you cannot do that. That doesn't seem to be logical or fair. But as I said, the reason that they're getting the backing is because they say that they are in unsafe environments and being harassed and tormented because of a lack of knowledge and understanding. But I agree with Apostle, and I think not.
So, woman of God, let me ask you a question. Are the LGBT book important for children to read?
No, it's not important for children to read, because it's exposing them to ideas that they really don't understand. For the most part, children are taught sexual education it's introduced around 8, 9 years old. And even that, the parents have to sign a waiver to agree to such teaching to be done to their child. So for someone in kindergarten to do this type of read aloud without any permission, without any regards for their family and their family's beliefs, I think it's wrong.
And let me ask you one more question then. Is a LGBT curriculum needed then in our schools?
Well, I believe yes. I believe that at a certain age, people should be exposed to whatever is out there. I believe that as a Christian, you should understand who Allah is. You should understand who, Krishna, who Buddha is. So I do believe, yes, the information is necessary, but not in elementary school and definitely not in a kindergarten classroom. I believe that when someone gets into a high school and they're able to logically be able to follow and have their own or already development and their own belief structure, their own framework, their own foundation, that they would be able to reason and shift through the information without being manipulated by the information or made to believe that because, my friend Susie and my name is Anna, held my hand and I felt whatever, that all of a sudden I'm queer. So I think it needs to be taught at an age that someone is able to intake that information and properly understand it.
Okay, anyone else like to submit a conversation pertaining to that? Okay, if not, let's put that same question to Dr. Boris, woman of God. Should the GAYBC be read in schools?
Why are you laughing at me? Good night, everyone. So rarely am I ever oscillating between two opinions. But for this one, I will go on record and say I keep hopping back and forth. I'm not hot or cold, because what I agree or believe, I want to make sure I am answering the question. What I agree or believe may be different from what is legal or reality. And I know we have mentioned about tabula rasa, for those who don't know, the babies with a blank slate, and that schooling begins at home. I am going to answer the question with a quick example that happened to me. My 4-year-old, she was about 4 at the time. She came to me one day and she's like, "Mommy, wait, 2 ladies can get married?" And I said to her, my heart leaped, but I did the duck mentality. I was very calm, but inside I was like this, and I had the decision to make. And I looked at her and said, "You know what, Bugs? Actually, yeah, 2 women can get married, but Mommy think that it's better when it's a man and a woman, because remember when we talk about babies, you need some from the man and some from the woman to make the baby. So that's why you need man and woman to do the babies. But yeah, actually, Mama, 2 women can get married." And she goes, "Okay." And she moved off. I was very glad that I didn't lie to her. When I mean lie to her, I could tell her, no, they can't and anything, because the reality is, while I disagree with it, they can. And what happened about a year later, she was having a conversation with one of her cousins, and her cousin said to me, "Oh, you're my best friend. I'm going to marry you." She said, "You can, but nah, I want to marry a guy." And I'm not saying that's going to change. Children usually validate what they're taught at home. And so I don't know if the dot gets being connected with, you're exposed to it. I don't make it a big deal. I have the ability to now guideline and guardrail those tabula rasa. She got a thumbprint. The reality is it can happen, but let me shift and shape it to what I believe is ethically correct. Because when I say lie to her, if I lied to her by bringing on, well, they can't, or they shouldn't, or they can't, I don't want her to grow and then find out that it's a reality that they can, and then come back to Mommy and say, "But that's not the truth." I was very calm. It was no different than if she asked me, "Mommy, can I wear my tank top in the wintertime?" I know I feel like I am trivializing it, but I made it not a big deal. And I said, "Actually, baby, they can. But guess what? Mommy think it's better when it's a man and a woman, because that is better in regards to getting your babies from 2 parts, and it is better that way." And she was totally okay with it. And I was okay with how I handled it. So Should the GAYBCs be taught in school? As opposed to what? By you not teaching it, does that mean that it's not exposed in their environment, in society, on every just angle that they see through entertainment that they see? Are you going to keep them in a bubble? What are you going to do? It's a way of, it's here to stay. Unfortunately, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but if we're going to talk about truth, let's talk truth. It's here to stay. So what are you going to do? We can have the same conversation as in, should smoking happen? I want to make sure is how do we deal with it? Let me put guidelines and guardrails through my kids that they're exposed. So when they grow up, it's not something wow or something different. So again, should it be taught in school? I will lean the way of the professional, the subject matter expert in regards to the age, but even in school, even if it's not in school, it's being infiltrated through many different means. So if it's here in school, the final say is mommy. And I'm fine that my 4-year-old came because I was then be able to guide her and shift her in how I would want it to be. So hope that answered the question, Bishop.
Well, let me put this question to you, woman of God, and panel in general. Then, should we make classrooms inclusive for LGBTQ students?
When you say inclusive, do you mean that they should sit together with my kids?
Sure.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't they sit there? Because guess what? I am conditioning my children for the world. So if you want to have a free, then when they go to college, they're going to run in it in college. They're going to run in it on the job force. They are going to run into it at some point. It's almost as if, which one do you want to do? You want to cuddle and they're shocked when they get of a certain age, which could actually be a great segue to the main problem in regards to mental illness, where they're getting hit by all these different things. Do I want my 4-year-old to be not even understanding, being exposed or answering my question? Or do you want my 14-year-old when hormones are going off and anybody that breathes past them, they're in love with, and this is the first time they're hearing of it, it can trigger psychological things. I am not the experts in it, but in regards to sitting next to somebody and say, Mommy, Susie has 2 moms. I'd be like, well, you know what? Families are different. You have single moms. You have grandmas in charge of homes. You have mommies and daddies in charge of homes. You have mommies alone in charge of homes. When I make it almost a non-factor, then that's the route that I choose to go. I don't know if it's the best route, but I do believe it might be the smartest for me, because my kids will be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's her. All right, we keep moving. So that's the route I feel like I'm taking, because it's here to stay.
It is indeed here to stay, but my thinking is this, honestly, that certain things should be taught at a certain age.
Agreed.
In teaching a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old calculus. Now, I do know that, I mean, some kids, geniuses, you do have a few of them, age of 5, 6, they're doing calculus, and a few kids at the age of 12, they're doing college level stuff, but that's far.
Yeah, but it's not even taught. But here's the thing, Bishop, and I know this is just the spotlight, but here's the thing why it is not even taught, but it's going to infiltrate here. If they're talking with their friends, they will be like, oh yeah, my mommy and my mommy, or something like that. And you're going to be like, they're going to come home and they'll be like, but Susie has 2 mommies. What are you going to do with that? You can explode with it. So even if it's not taught with the school, you can explode with it, or you can go, okay, how do I maneuver and handle and deal with this in regards to it?
It's even on television.
It is even on television.
Even on television. And every kid watches television. Okay, should GAYBCs be read in schools? Dr. Phil, we're so happy to have you on tonight. Man of God, how say you?
Well, Bishop, yes, I appreciate this question. primarily because it's an issue and that I feel should be have a conversation around, especially with Christian people. You know, a lot of times we just go straight for demonizing things, right? So I wanted us to have the conversation so that we can point out the pros and cons to this subject and really be intelligent when we're communicating to someone in a school or in a situation about it. Personally, I believe that parents are solely in charge of and having the responsibility of raising their children, because they're the ones that bore the child, and they're the ones that should be implementing morals and certain standards. I don't see where a school should be implementing things like this, because they are to educate our children, not raise our children. And I think there's a huge difference in giving my child moral standards based on how you feel or they feel they should get it, or should I take the standard and say to my children, this is the moral standard that I want you to have. I don't believe schools are equipped to give children moral standards. I don't believe they're able to do that, in the sense where our children, I understand our children are there most of the day. We're at work, we go to work for 8 hours. I mean, most likely maybe 9 hours or so. And our children are either in daycare or in school, and we don't see them. They have most of the opportunities to influence our children. So I believe that the standards should be very straightforward. When my child is 4 or 5, there's a chart here I'm reading. It says between the ages of 2 and 7, children understand the world through symbols and mental images, right? Between the ages of 7 and 12, they understand the world through logical thinking and categories. And then between the ages of 12 and up, they understand the world through hypothetical thinking and scientific reasoning. Okay, so to teach a child between the ages of 2 and 7 about something that they're not mentally developed to comprehend, they understand it through symbols and mental images, but they don't comprehend the full use of something like that. The feelings, the emotional intelligence for an expansion like that. I'm going to put it this way. We did the study when it came to, and I don't want to be long on this, but I have been thinking about it. When we did the study on sexual harassment, it started between the ages of 3 and 13. But if the person was harassed by the same sex, they would remain in that state when that process was done, when they were introduced to the sexual experience, before their emotions or their mind were able to calculate and comprehend what is going on. What does this mean, right? It became their identity by the time they were able to say, this is what I am. This is who I am because of this incident. I don't think putting it in their space is fair, and also, if that's the case, then we need to get Bibles back in school. If this is going to be the standard being given, it's fair that if the GAYBCs has the right to be in schools, so does the Bible. So does prayer. Because that's my standard, right? If we want to be fair to the people that have want to raise their children in the gay lifestyle, and that's what they want to share, then sharing the Bible should be just as important, because that's our values too. And schools should be pushing to have the Bible to be taught just right beside, right along. If you're going to introduce this, the Bible should be right alongside it, because that's fair.
Amen to that. Well, what's really upsetting, honestly, is that some schools are even introducing satanic worship to our children. Think about that. They don't want the Bible, yet they can introduce satanic worship to our little young ones. That's why every morning that you send your kids to school, you have to really lay your hands on them and pray for them. Because number one, even if certain things are not being mentioned by the teachers, you don't know the heck who they are sitting beside and what that person is being taught, and that person is getting over to your little kid who you are trying to raise in the house of God. Listen, we are certainly in perilous time, but as Bishop Wolliston would say, we're having the conversation. We miss him, certainly. Is there anyone would like to say anything else about the question, should GAYBCs be read in schools, or can we go on? Apostle?
Well, I don't know if, and again, we thank God for the conversation, and I don't know if anyone has the perfect answer per se, but like Dr. Phil made a very valid point in that if they're going to teach the GAYBCs, why not religious education? But you specifically said the Bible. Now, someone could come up and make another argument and say, well, if the Bible is being taught, what about the Quran? And then somebody could come and say, wait a minute, you have the Bible and the Quran, what about the Bhagavad Gita? What about, you know, where does it stop? And then we could be like, well, we are the majority. Well, are we discriminating against the minority? I'm just throwing it off for conversation.
No, wait, Apostle, let me throw this at you.
And I'm with you, don't get me wrong.
No,
I'm just saying, in the broad spectrum of things.
I don't even mind that. I studied the Quran. I studied Buddhism. Before I made a full commitment to Christ, I studied every other religious practice because it gave me information, right? When I became a Christian, I was fully aware as to why I am a Christian. I was fully aware as to why I believe what I believe. So I believe I agree with Dr. Boris. It's important for us to be fully informed so that when we make a decision, it's a solid decision. We've counted the cost of everything else and said, this is why I choose Christ, right? Because after weighing everything out, it's like asking yourself the question, whose God is God? And without you measuring that out, I don't know if you really thought through why you are a Christian. Why did you choose to be a Christian if you haven't measured it against everything else?
One point I would like to add, it's really dependent on who the teacher is. When you are teaching something to young children, there's a bias that can be involved depending on who the teacher is. So if the teacher is a transgender, gay, queer individual, then the way in which they teach it is going to be more likely different than someone who is not of that nature. And that's where the problem lies, because children, especially young children, they want to be like the teacher. Mommy can't tell them how to do homework. Oh no, teacher said do it this way, do it that way. They idolize the teacher for the most part, especially little children. And if they believe that the teacher, is that way, and the teacher is saying this is the way to go, as the one in which we listened to, she seemed to be a little bit subjective in the way in which she read it, the way her voice went up and down and how she highlighted certain points of it. then that would give the child the idea that, you know what, this is something that is good, something that you should really look into. So I think even when you mention about the Bible, you know, the Bible is not taught like the Bible, but it's taught because they have to do it in history. And if you have someone that's teaching it that is against it, they're going to make the children believe that this is folklore, that this is made up, and that this is fictionalized because of their perception of the information. And because you know, the child is not developed, as you pointed out, Dr. Reed, that children are not reasoning at 6 and 5 years old. They're just using whatever information you give them and really taking it as the gospel truth. So I think one of the greatest problems with that GAYBCs is who is going to be the teacher that's going to read that book or any other type of information along that side to our children.
Amen to that.
So in that light, Dr. King, and I'm just throwing this out, should a teacher be forced to teach the gay or the LGBT agenda if they are Christian and they don't believe in it? Or let's say, for example, if they are teaching Black history as the curriculum, is a white teacher qualified to teach that class?
And to be honest with you, the question you arise, it's so very important, because right now they're trying to make education more culturally responsive. And that's a problem that many Black and brown students have, is that they're not able to relate to the information that's being provided. They're not seeing themselves in the history. They're not seeing themselves in the literature. So therefore, if I don't see myself in it, then I must not be a part of it. I must not be a part of the class that is able to write history and be able to be somebody noteworthy. So, and is a white person qualified? I really believe it depends on their viewpoint on the history, because history can be subjective, and someone can take the civil rights movement and they can turn it in another direction, as if it was a violent movement, one of insubordination, one in which you lost, you know, countless of amount of lives and you know, millions of monies and so on and so forth. And you hear it. There's just a lot of information that many, I would say, Americans don't have, to say it the best way, is that people who are not of color really don't understand what it is to be a person of color. Since you pointed that part out, it's really difficult for them to really walk in such an individual's shoes. And it's the same thing, I guess, for someone who is queer or gay. It's hard for us to walk in that shoe because we're not in that shoe. So I think we would teach it differently. I think, yes, you are qualified to do it. And yes, we are forced to teach the gay and the queer and all the other information. We really don't have a choice. You have to do the requirements of the job, and everything is there. Hopefully, when you teach it, you will do it objectively and you will not put in your own bias in there, just for the sake of being reasonable and fair. Because just like I would not want, you know, a Caucasian to put in their bias, if they had one, against the civil rights movement, I would not put in my bias and make children believe that queer people are, you know, quote unquote, going to hell, and I don't like it. No, I would not do that. I would teach it in the manner in which it's presented. Just read through it.
Wow.
There's a lot that we have to discuss concerning that. Oh yes, oh yes. But listen, at least we are having the conversation. Okay, now we are dealing with mental health and parenting. Mental health and parenting. The question is this: how should parents manage mental health issues in the home? In the home. Okay, let's put that same question at this time to Dr. Donna Boris, the question is, how should parents manage mental health issues in the home?
Well, mental health. I am always careful when speaking on a topic that I am not qualified to elaborate on. Nevertheless, May was Mental Health Month, where they late. And we all, though, can agree that there are some stigmas, some which are outdated, that are still there when it comes on to mental awareness, because the umbrella is mental awareness, and underneath it, you have many different springs. So how should parents manage mental health issues in the home? No different, in my opinion, than how you would handle any other health issues. And one of the things you want to be is to be honest and to be real, and realize that since we're in a church setting, it is not, you cannot only just pray it away. And for the rest of the night, I might run a common thread of a conversation I have had with a mother in our church that, well known, she did it on, won't call any names, sir, but she did it on a platform where we've had a conversation, and for 30 years, she said to me, Sister D, I knew that there's something wrong with my child. 30 years, and I keep on praying. And I would pray. And I said, but what else would you do? She said, my gut knew, but I just kept praying. And she said, what hurts, and in regards to her guilt, is that I worked at the best hospital in New York, and I passed doctors every single day, but I kept praying. And she did nothing until her child had a psychotic episode. Now, if as a mom, I see my child keeps on doing this all day, the first thing I'm going to go, baby, what's wrong with your eye? If I see my child keeps on doing this, baby, what's wrong with your head? Or what's wrong with your shoulder? If there's signs about mental imbalance, why do we pray it away or brush it away when we wouldn't do the same thing if there's something wrong with something you can physically see? So how should parents manage mental health issues in the home? No different than you would manage any other health issues, because mental health is a health issue, and it's real, and it's there, and it covers a broad amount of things. We can go into the different types of it, but the general, how should parents manage mental health issues? No different than you would handle any other health issues. I yield back my time, Bishop.
Okay, thank you much. Thank you much, woman of God. Okay, let's put that same question to the apostle. Man of God, how should parents manage mental health issues in the home?
Well, Bishop Scott, certainly not an excuse to be given, but that's not my field of expertise. But I think in terms of being balanced and well-rounded, that even today pastors should at least understand some of the fundamental things about such a subject. Now, I have never had first-hand experience with someone that was mentally challenged in my home. When you have experience on certain field or subject, you can elaborate extensively. But I do know, growing up in the church, and it carries a heavy stigma. And so Dr. Boris was rightly saying that the mother did not take the child for professional help, because oftentimes, and please don't misunderstand me, I am getting turned off at times with religion. You say, but you're a pastor, you shouldn't speak like that. I go to church every Sunday. I am religious to an extent. But where it becomes fanatical and radical and legalistic, and some people do this out of sincerity, but like I said, mindset, how they were taught. So everything that goes wrong, it's a demon. So if we have diabetes, we take insulin. That's fine. That's not a problem. If we have high blood pressure, we take a pill. That's okay. That's okay. You can take the pill and preach on the pulpit and preach a sermon, and you're fine. If the brain cell is damaged, you're crazy, you're mad, you're possessed, you disqualify. You're not spiritual enough. You're not deep enough. How dare you? And so sometimes that's the way we handle a mental illness. And so what has happened is that people suffer in silence, struggle in silence on the down low, because how dare you say that? I will lose my livelihood. I will lose my job. I'll be stigmatized. So how do we deal with it? And it's okay to get professional help. Like some people think if they're having problem, they cannot go to a secular counselor. It has to be a Christian counselor. And I would rather have a Christian counselor, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, when we have a physical illness, we go to a doctor. We just say, wait a minute, is the optician a Christian? We don't even ask if they're gay for that. As a matter of fact, we take the diagnose, they treat it. But now, when it comes to counseling, it has to be a Christian. I mean, I'm not saying it's okay. It's nice to have a Christian, but there are people in professional levels, and they handle things in a professional manner. So I think we have to be more open and balanced in those regards. And sometimes people do need professional counseling, and it's not just a demon. If a nervous breakdown, it's a demon. If it's a nervous thing, cast them out. If it's nervous, and sometimes we need medication. And I'm not big for medication, but we take it for diabetes, we take it for high blood pressure, we take it for thyroids. No. You can't take it for mental depression. So I think there's such a biasness towards that disease. And even pastors who commit suicide, or pastors who quit the church, they can't share that. Because I tell you what, I believe people can function to a point. It depends on the level of mental illness. And again, I say I'm not the expert. A guy could come on the news and do a fantastic job and has a mental problem or depressed. A guy could go on a basketball court and have a triple-double, and when he leaves there, he cries himself to sleep. So this can affect anybody, and it's nothing wrong with getting professional help, just as you would if you break your toe or if you break your pinky.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we must understand that with mental imbalance, we all to some degree have experienced that. Who has never ever been under stress? Stress. Who has never ever had to worry? Come on, and so forth. These things do happen. And that's why it's always good to always keep a positive outlook on life. And that's why I just love my friend when he said, keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Because one of the things that hope says is that my present situation is not my future. Keep hope alive. I see Pastor laughing at me, Pastor Carmel, King-Lochke, but she knows why I'm laughing, and I know too why she's laughing. So let me put that same question to the woman of God. Pastor, how should parents manage mental health issues in the home?
Well, I value that which Apostle Rojas has said, and Dr. Burris has already laid down the foundation. And keeping hope alive is something that it really is a powerful word for all parents to have, to hope the best. And I think one of the issues is that most parents don't know what mental illness is. Really and truly, what is the mental? What does it consist of? And when you looked up, it consists of the psychological, social, emotional, behavior, conducts, choices, decisions of a person. So first we have to start with that, is educating parents as to what that is. And, the question there is, whose job is that? Whose job is it to educate the parents? Whose job is it to make sure that the parents are even aware of what their children are dealing with? Because the parents can't handle the children if the parents themselves are not informed. When I'm thinking about when I was growing up, way back when, I think a lot of parents were unaware of what was the name of these specific things that their children may have been dealing with. There wasn't a label or a name attached, but they saw the behaviors or the conducts that were different to the norm. And because they themselves were not, didn't understand it, they would just try to do different strategies, behavior management strategies, I believe, to try to make the child behave in what they believe to be quote unquote normal. And those things, I believe, cause more harm than good, because they came across as judgmental and condescending and condemning. And we know that when you're dealing with mental health, you really have to show empathy. You really have to be kind. You really have to be open. You really have to deliberately create a safe space. So your children would know that no matter what, mommy, daddy, auntie, whomever is going to listen to me. They're going to hear me out. They're not going to hate me. They're not going to not love me anymore because I share the things that I'm thinking. And, just like with health disorders, like for instance, diabetes, it tends to run in a family. And they've done many researches, and they have found that mental illness or mental health challenges also are hereditary. They said about 50% of it. 50% is hereditary, and 50% could be due to the environment and the situations or circumstances that a child may have to endure, or a child that is placed in. So that's very important, because we will know that, you know what? Great grandma used to have these bouts where she just wanted to be alone. She didn't want anyone in. She didn't want to talk to anyone. And people just thought she was a mean, old, bitter person. But really and truly, that's not the case. Because we don't understand what the person is going through in their mind. And all we can do is see the output, the result of what's happening in the mind. It's hard for us to understand that these things didn't just happen. And oftentimes it's something that our parents have been dealing with. And sometimes as parents, we can step back and see in our children that really and truly some of the behaviors or some of the quote unquote mental issues that they may have, we also struggled with. We may have used different methods to deal with it, but we also too struggled with it. And I think just letting a child understand that they're not alone, that someone else has been where they are, that not making them feel isolated or awkward about what they're going through is going to really take that child in the right direction. It's also been said that if children have experienced molestation, sexual abuse, if children have been in situations where their basic needs are not met, which is a need for shelter, food, and clothing and safety, these also can onset mental illnesses. It sets them off per se for unknown reasons.
Yes.
The thing about mental illness that is so difficult is that we don't know how. How is it caused? How do you stop it? What is the real remedy to really remedy this situation? Is it behavior modification? Is it pills? Is it a combination? But I know that in schools where you see the children that are dealing with emotional disorders, ADHD, I know that as a staff, we're not properly trained. I know that the students around them, they don't even know how to deal with a child who's, violent, upset, enraged. And really and truly, it's something that needs to be talked about, something needs to be dealt with, and strategies need to be improved. I believe the system needs to have more counselors, more mental health workers available for the children, because I believe that it definitely affects their ability to be able to function as other children do. And I believe that there is a way to address it if the proper funds are put into developing that part of the child.
Okay. Pastor, let me ask you a question. How important is it for parents to provide emotional support for the child?
I think it's extremely. I think having respect, when I was growing up, they said, when you ask the question why, the answer was given because I told you so. Well, that is in some ways, quite disrespectful. And I think parents need to respect children just as we want the children to respect the adult. And we need to communicate with them in a way that's non-threatening, non-challenging, and let them know that we are willing to listen to them, and that we, will not withhold our love because of the things that they may share. So it's very important that children are able to trust their parents, because if they're not able to trust us, then they are going to look for another outlet, another place in which they're able to share or medicate, dull the noise that's going on in their mind. And, I believe that prayer does help, but as Apostle and as Dr. Boris said, more needs to be done. We have to apply wisdom, because the brain is an organ, and just like any organ, it can be treated.
How important would you say, and I'm putting this to you and to the panel, how important is it for us to make that person feel confident in making decisions? Is it important? They have to. They're going through difficulties, yet they have to make certain decisions. How important is it for them to feel confident in their decision making?
Wait, Bishop, just so we're clear, when you're saying confident in their decision,
that they're making the right choice.
The person that is struggling with mental health?
That's correct, yes.
Well, it depends on what they're struggling with, right? So let us make sure we're level set on
worry, or stress, and so on.
So if there's someone that has a chemical imbalance in their brain, so if they're bipolar or somebody who is psychotic or would render self-harm, where they need the medication to get their brain back, that's balance. That is different from somebody who is having probably a bout of nervous breakdown that is triggered by stress or lack of sleep, or they're having an episode of I feel so stressed, where they can have therapy through talk. But somebody who needs a psychiatrist, that means that they need to get something written, that one, it would sometimes mean they might need a conservator, right? And that would be somebody who is licensed to dictate, are you able to make decisions at this point in your life? And that's why we want to be careful. So I always yield to you, Bishop, because not only are you licensed in the spiritual world, but in the secular world, you are licensed in that. It would fall under, it depends on what and where you're struggling with. Is it something that you are not able to function and make decisions for yourself? So you would need someone to then make decisions for you? Or is it something that you can then talk it out, or something that you can vent it out, or exercise, or change your lifestyle, or your eating habit, or your sleeping habit? So those also, it depends, okay, says the non-expert.
The question is, how should parents manage mental health issues in the home? Parent, children. Okay, so the person that is going through XYZ needs to be built up so that they can make certain decisions and act the way they should act. Now, is it right for the parents to kind of try to build some confidence in that child? Think about it.
But it wouldn't. I feel like I'm not. We usually connect, Bishop. I'm trying to catch what you're throwing.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. This would span through mental health. Parents should always inject confidence in their children. The ability,
Right.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg says, I need you to use your voice, even to speak, even if your voice shakes. And one of the most beautiful things that for me, I could speak, I was so glad that I was having girls, because I made a conscious effort that I will be raising fire-breathing humans that are able to speak and be able to adjust and stand in their truth. So whether it's mental health or whatever it is, jobs of parents are to raise high functioning individuals that they can function outside of the home, inside of the home, in any different environment they are, whether it's adaptability or anything like that. So that spans mental health. So yeah, it doesn't matter who you are, you should inject confidence in your child. I hope that's what I'm catching, what you're throwing.
Building confidence is very, very much important. Building confidence. There was a time in my life I had no confidence whatsoever in myself, in the sense that teachers said that I would come out to nothing. The school that I went to in England, I was the second Black boy that went to that school. And I tell you this, I was looked down upon and so forth. And no one even tried. No one even tried. But thank God I had a teacher that saw what others did not see in me, to the degree that when I got my degrees, my God, I went back to that school and I showed it to those teachers. And I said, how do you like me now? Okay.
But Bishop, can I ask that question? Because that's very interesting, because I am privileged enough to have known your mother. But then what is Mother Scott then? What part was she playing in that?
No,
because I know the human that she is.
Oh yeah, well, let me say this, that as a child, there were so many things that I hid from my mother. Mother, hear me now, my mother lost her husband when she was a young girl. I don't even think she was 30 years of age yet when she lost her husband. And a woman under 30 is young. And my mother was so hot, good looking, that when it was parents teachers night, I remember that she came to school, and the classroom that she came to was still being taught. She came extra early and she wanted to speak with the headmaster. Now, my mother was so good looking that when she knocked on that classroom door and the teacher came and opened the door, and the teacher saw her and told her where the headmaster's room was. When she was walking down the corridor, that teacher opened the door and took another look. I said to her, why are you looking at my mother like that? But one of the things with me is that I held back a lot from my mother. Why? She lost her husband at an early age, And certain things I said I would never, ever bombard her with, to the degree that, can you see a boy 8, 9, 10 years of age in the home painting the house for my mother, painting the house? I was 8, 9, and 10 when I used to do chores like that. I would do things that my father would do. So a lot of things I hid from my mother because of what she was going through. And I said to my mother at a very early age, don't you dare get married again. And I said those words, but at that time I did not understand. I wish to God I never, ever uttered those words, because now that I'm a big old man and know what feelings are, I would to God that she had disappointed me and gone and get married because she deserved it. Now, let's not dwell on that. Please don't ask those questions. Let me put this question to Dr. Phil, man of God. How should parents manage mental health issues in the home?
Thank you, Bishop. The answers that were given are just so thorough. I'm just going to add my piece. I'm not a professional, of course, but I am a parent. And I think that most parents love their children and want the best for them. Now, I believe being informed is the biggest priority of a parent. And to know your child, know their behaviors, and know when to identify when the behaviors are abnormal, right? If you know your child would normally do something, and then you observe 1, 2, 3 days go by, and their behavior is different, it calls for concern.
Yes.
And so there are professionals that you can go to and have your child evaluated if you see something extreme going on. I think that's also important because sometimes our child experiences certain traumas that they don't say anything to the parent. And you see an extreme change, either expressed in anger or in suppressed anger, which is depression, right? And they just start hiding themselves either from you. They stop coming to you. They just start going straight to their room. And that's a signal. That should be a red flag. Yes. We should never be too busy to identify changes in our children, right? Whether it's, growth, changing as they're growing and they're going through different stages, you have those changes, but then you can identify when they're going through, when that change is turned into something else, right? And even if you don't know how to describe it, I know you mothers, you have this spider sense, this thing, something ain't right with this, something ain't going on. And, when you have those feelings, investigate, check it out, find out what is happening, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's just mental. Children experience stress. It may not be your level of stress, but it's stress to them. And so you got to be able to come down and say, what are you thinking about? How are you feeling? How did that make you feel? Get them to define their feelings. Just talking about boys, we don't train our boys to express how they feel. So when they become men and they have to communicate with their wives, they don't know how to define how they feel about something. So therefore, no conversation is met. I believe that development is huge and also important emotionally, not just physical, mental development, like the brain, considering the brain and its development, but I'm talking just emotional aspect as well, being able to define how we feel and express how we feel is vital for parents to be able to teach their children these things. And parents need to also educate themselves in being that impression that you want to place on your child, right? Don't just expect them to develop and you not develop yourself, okay? Because, telling your children, do as I say, but don't do as I do, that doesn't work. Eventually, you're going to do what you saw your parents do. That's just simply going to happen. How many of us have just automatically, never even expected it, but you find yourself repeating what your parents said and doing what your parents did, right? I know there are two boys that grew up in a home, and the dad was an alcoholic. And one grew up hating what he saw and not becoming an alcoholic, and the other imitated what he saw and became an alcoholic, right? Which is also a mental illness, as we're talking about it. So mental illness has so many levels. There's so many craters and so many levels to it that we really do need to educate ourselves as to how we play a role in it, right? And that's my answer, Bishop.
Okay, thank you much, man of God. Would you believe that even dogs go through stress? Even dogs go through stress. But after saying all of that, now it's just time for us to impinge on question number one. And question number one is this: what are some of the signs that a child or parent is experiencing a mental breakdown, and how do we recover? However, this particular question is in two parts. Let's do part one first. What are some of the signs that a child or parent is experiencing a mental breakdown? A mental breakdown. Pastor Carmel, King-Lochke, you've never had a mental breakdown, but at least explain to me, how do we know?
You know, that's a great question, because as you proved to us, children are very slick. You know, they're very clever, and they know what is going to make their parents feel bad or sad or ashamed or fearful, so on and so forth. So you have to really be a good detective. I think as a parent, there's so many things, so many places you need to cover. And I can say for a friend of mine's very close that I knew, and her child is in the 99th percentile of the state. Very bright, very talented, all over, academically, athletically, artistically. She was in the 8th grade. She was attending classes at Columbia University on a weekend for a special pilot program, and come to find out that the child was cutting herself. So one would not know that such a child who is just so involved, so intelligent, so well-rounded, would be also at the same time stressed. And how the parent found out, the child had been wearing longer sleeves, so she didn't even realize it. It's through the school, believe it or not. One of the teachers found out from one of the parents of the other kids that said, you know, such and such has been cutting, and and then the teacher, you know, called the parent and let her know that she heard it from another parent. And then sure enough, when the mother went and investigated, she found it. And of course, she started, you know, therapy, and went through the process of recovery, which we're not getting into. But my point is that we really have to cover every basis. It's so important that we have good communications with the schools, with friends, whoever our children's friends are. Make sure that we have good communication with those parents. You know, just make sure that we cover every base. And this way, we're likely to find out when something is happening. Because I think typically when the breakdown happens, it's after a great deal of stress, a great deal of depression, a great deal of mental fatigue, when we finally do see the symptoms or the behavior that lets us know, wow, this child is in danger. Some children, you know, they will isolate, as Dr. Reed said. Sometimes they will, all of a sudden, their personality changes. You know, if your child is an extrovert or an introvert, and all of a sudden, one who was the life of the party, they don't want to be around anyone. Then the same is true of the opposite. One who was very introverted, all of a sudden, you know, they're just doing these things that are not normal to their behavior, because they're seeking attention for that which they're going through. So I would say what's most importantly is to make sure that we have open communication with all adults that are in share space with our children.
Well said indeed, woman of God. The question is, what are some of the signs that a child or parent is experiencing a mental breakdown? Okay, let's put that same question to Dr. Phil. Man of God, we only have 15, no, we only have 12 minutes. Dr. Phil, how say you?
I mean, I will be repeating myself, but it's primarily just looking out, knowing your child, knowing their base personality traits, their habits, being familiar with their personality, and saying to yourself, is this typical? Finding out, knowing in your mind, is this behavior even somewhat normal when it comes to acting out? If your child is angry all the time, that's not normal behavior, right? If they're sad all the time, that is not normal behavior. That's something that is extreme. And anything that's not anything that doesn't have balance or is an extreme is unhealthy, right? So we have to just be aware and knowledgeable about what is different in our children, and how can finding out from the experts, from the doctors, or from any child expert, what is the necessary steps to take in order to remedy it.
Great. Let's put that same question to Dr. Boris, woman of God. How say you?
Well, I think for everyone that's on the panel or those that are watching us, we want to understand exactly what is a mental breakdown, right? And in a nutshell, it is just a period, which is a segment of intense mental distress, right? And stress, get your pen, everybody. This is the only thing I'm sure of. A stress is the inability to cope with life challenges. So I think our bishop has mentioned that everyone goes through periods of stress. So stress, the inability to cope with life challenges, and we know what challenges are. So those challenges, now the signs, because it's my inability to handle what is going on, those signs can be physical, they can be psychological, or they can be behavioral. So then just what everyone else was saying, so think about it now, it's layering bricks. We kind of know what a mental breakdown is. Mental distress, a stress is the inability to cope with life challenges. And with your inability to cope, it's going to manifest itself some way. It's going to manifest itself, whether it's physical, whether it's going to be psychological or behavioral. And so any one of those that is shift outside of the norm, most importantly, is just trust your gut. As everyone has mentioned before, you know your child, and not only your child, you know yourself. If this is not you, if this is not even David, and I rarely ever tie in the Bible, David knew himself, that he questioned himself, why am I cast down? That's telling me that he recognized this is not me. So you have to be able to spot and know that, is this you? Oh, what is going on with me? That's right. The prices of egg gone up, or your child, or something like that. So you know what, whatever it is, it's going to manifest this way, one of those three ways. Bishop, back to you.
It will manifest itself, definitely. Okay, let's put that same question now to the apostle. Man of God, how say you?
Well, Dr. Phil, I can speak certainly from my personal experience. And I myself had experienced mental breakdown in terms of depression. And don't look at me funny like somehow I'm not anointed anymore. Elisha went through a bipolar experience. He wanted to die. Well,
Yes.
He was suicidal.
Yes.
And he said, take my life. I don't want to live no more. God, I said, get up. Come on, man. You're not the only one. I got 7,000 that has bowed their knees to Baal. So we have experiences in the Bible where Moses said, oh, wretched man that I am. You know what I mean? Kill me. Take my, So Peter went through the Bible characters that did experience some of these things. David, why art thou downcast? He had encouraged himself in the Lord when he came back from Ziklag. All the leadership wanted to stone him. Life has challenges, man. I'm telling you. So it would be nice to think that how dare you? You're a man of God. You're not supposed to be going through certain things. Or the man of God is who, or the woman of God is who the enemy is coming after. But some of the signs for me was, oh God, I didn't want to get up in the morning. I didn't want to go to work. When I go to work, I was out. I was spaced out. I did my job and I went to my car. It was stressful, and I had to preach. And so I had to keep my upper lip and come on Sunday morning and act like all is well. Sometimes we as pastors, we could mask it well, because we don't want them to see us down, because that spirit can transfer an entire congregation. So sometimes you're going through, whether you're dealing with kids, marriage, finance, health, you have to go up there and perform, and people have to realize that pastors are human being. People on the whole, can go through things in this life and challenges. But one of the things too, Bishop, that you asked earlier on, in terms of the confidence, I would say more or less the support, because back then in the islands, and I think education, somebody once said, is the great equalizer to human conditions. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and I think back in the islands when I grew up, you couldn't be depressed. They let you do slap and say, "Come on, get your act together." But over here we have so much treatment, and we can analyze things. And if your child is autism, they're going to come home and they're going to give them therapy. Back in the islands, when we grew up in the village, there was no therapy. You know what I mean? And I believe support is pivotal, because from what I understood, taking care of someone that has mentally or being a caregiver can be challenges and can be very demanding. So support is critical, because today it's you, tomorrow it could be me. I don't mean to sound like a prophet of doom, but I shared in the book of Job on Sunday, and it also said a man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble, and sometimes trouble comes uninvited, and we have to deal with it. But yeah, man, we go through. David said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall not fear no evil." Not because there was no evil, but because God was with him. And so now we thank God for his grace. I know sometimes we can get on a thing that everything is going to be all right, and there's a favor, and everything is God, and we carry on, and what I mean. But sometimes we deal with stuff as people, and we need support and God's grace to see us through.
Amen. God's grace to see us through. Now, hear me. We have 4 minutes left. Only 4 minutes left. That was half of the question. Now, the thing is, how do we recover? How do we recover? We're going through stress and this and that, the other. How do we recover? In a nutshell, Dr. Boris, how did Bishop Scott recover? How did you recover? Tell me, please.
Be honest, speak out, seek help, treat mental health illness the same way you would treat any other illness. That is it. Whatever, if you have a headache, you go to the doctor. If your heart is running, you go to the cardiologist. If your toe is break, you go to the podiatrist. If my tooth hurts, I go to the dentist. Treat it the same way you would.
Amen. Pastor Carmel, King-Lochke.
I would say seek help. Seek help in any fashion that's available to you. I know that part of the problem is that with healthcare, it's some insurances do and some don't. So it can be quite expensive. But we really need to realize, just as Dr. Boris said, it's not something you can do without. So whatever it's going to require you to do, whatever sacrifices, we really need to get the proper care that is necessary. Seek help.
Seek help. Okay, Apostle.
Oh, yeah, I concur with Dr. King. Seek help, but also professional help. Because sometimes some of the counsel is not wise, it's ill-advised. And so you can't go to anybody. I often preach, be careful who you listen to, who speak into your life. They could give wrong counsel. Professional help is very important. Of course, we have to trust God. We know that. We ought to pray. We ought to seek God. We don't want to take that out of the equation. But sometimes, give that as the easy answer. Pray. Sometimes we need to seek professional help.
Amen.
Support is important. Yeah.
Sounds good. Dr. Phil, how do you say it?
Bishop, I have to agree with everyone. Don't isolate. You don't isolate yourself. You're going to have the temptation to do that, but don't isolate yourself. Talk to someone, even if it's a friend, and let them know what you're dealing with so that they can help you. Because sometimes the place that we're in is too dark, Bishop, and you don't even realize that you need to ask for help. So sometimes you need a friend too that's going to point you in the right direction.
Amen. You need a friend. That's one thing I did not have when I was young, a friend, and I needed that. But thank God now I've grown. I am surrounded by good people. Well, certainly
Amen.
we have heard a lot. We have said a lot. What definitely now should we take away? We have 60 seconds. Apostle, what should we take away from tonight's conversation?
Well, as I'll take a line from Bishop Wolliston. I thank God we are having the conversation.
Thank God we're having the conversation. Okay, let's hear from Pastor Carmel King-Lochke.
Train a child early to become successful tomorrow.
Amen. Dr. Delores. Pastor.
No. Mental health is real. Mental health is real.
Okay, let's hear from the man of God himself, Dr. Phil.
Be proactive about your situation.
Okay, well, certainly we want to thank God tonight for the panel that did an extremely tremendous job. Thank God for the apostle that weighed in tonight. Thank God for Pastor Carmel King-Lochke. Thank God for Dr. Boris that weighed on in. And of course, we want to thank God for the man of God himself, Dr. Bill. Man of God, certainly it's a pleasure once again. This is Bishop Scott saying thank you for weighing in. It's all being well. See you next week, same time on the Bishop's Corner.